honorable members, members of the department. Can we start? HOD?
Yes.
Yeah. Hopefully we finish with your caucus. Okay, honorable members and members of the department, and also those members that are joining us online, and I believe also the minister is also joining us online. It has gone past 9 o'clock already. We are having a meeting of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts for purposes of looking into or getting a briefing from the Department of Social Development on matters we have resolved on during the annual report, which was last year. Of course, we are joined by the members of the department. Before we may start, can I get just an indication from members for record purposes, those that are present, to indicate they are present?
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, and also good morning actually in the officials that have joined us today and Minister online. My name is Matlodi Maseka, and I'm the member of the Standing Committee of Public Accounts.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Good morning, Chair, and good morning to the HOD and the team. My name is Isaac Mbulelo Sileku, and I'm a member of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Sileku. There was a request. Yes, those members online.
Good morning, Chair, and good morning all. My name is Derek America, and I'm a member of the committee. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. Member Kasim is present online as well. Thank you.
Any other member online? Okay, honorable members.
Good morning, Chair.
Okay. I believe the minister is also joining us online. Are you online, Minister?
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning to the honourable members and to the team from DST as well as the Audit Committee. My apologies, I have a bit of a frog in my throat, and I thought I'd rather exercise a bit of caution. So I'm at my office, but online. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I think that is all the people that have indicated that they are online. I think so far as the department is concerned, I'm not going to ask any introduction. As and when members of the department speak, they can actually introduce themselves. Without us wasting time, I would like us to, Honorable Maseko.
Chair, just for clarity and maybe consistency, I've got this problem of I have to make sure I get the understanding. The engagement today is in person or hybrid? Because the communication I got is in person. Because I would have opted for being online.
Yes, Honorable Maseko, you are correct. It is in person, but can we deal with that after we finish with the department? Yes, in our own, I've also got the same concerns that we are having. So let's rather not wash this dirty linen in front of. Yeah, so that's fine. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to ask the department if they can take us through their presentation, and thereafter we will ask members who want to engage with the report to engage in that regard. HOD?
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson and Honourable members of the committee. I will hand over to our CFO and Director of Finance for the presentation.
Good morning, Chairperson and members. Juan Smith, I'm the CFO for the department. I will go through the presentation, everyone. Can I proceed, Chairperson?
Yes.
Chairperson, first of all, relating to the annual report and also to the resolutions that was communicated to us from the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. The first item was item 4, which is on page 2 of that report, and this is a transversal finding. It's concerning the broad-based Black economic empowerment, and as stated there, while engaging with the departments on the BBBEE compliance rate, the committee was aware of this challenge with the certification that need to be done by departments and public entities. But that these annual costs for certification is huge, quite high, in terms of to become compliant to this prescript. The committee then requested that we engage the relevant stakeholders to determine the most effective way forward in this matter. As we know, this is a transversal matter, so National Treasury together with Provincial Treasury is one of the stakeholders in terms of that, given that the National Treasury has the authority in terms of the BEE reporting template. And then the BEE Commission is the authority of the deadline date relating to the reporting of the BEE reporting template. In our understanding, the regulations are contradictory to the extent that the regulations require organs of state and public entities to be verified in a manner which are suggested. The DTIC, as the custodian of the BBBEE legislation, indicated that they need to embark on a process to amend the regulations and align that with the requirements of the Act, which does not require the BBBEE compliance of organs of state to be verified by a verification agency professional. Just in short, Chair, this means the verification means that you'll have to appoint a consultant, a verifying agent, a professional, and this is huge cost that we need to determine, and it takes quite a while in terms of that to be able to do that verification. The reason why we're saying is that the status quo remains for this was the second year running that together with Provincial Treasury and together with the Auditor General, that there was agreement that we will just disclose this in the annual report as we did, and that the verification will be done once these contradictory issues with regard to the legislation and the Act as far as National Treasury is concerned, and the Commissioner in terms of the specific transversal resolution on BBBEE. Here, the next one is also a transversal finding and resolution. The compliance audits versus the performance audits. And again, here the committee were looking at the year-on-year clean audits in terms of most of the departments. However, the committee was of the opinion that there should be a move towards performance auditing in order to get value for money in terms of departments in relation to their service delivery mandates. And that was the resolution from the committee again, that the committee would then engage the Auditor General of South Africa, the Audit Committee, as well as the Provincial Treasury to ascertain whether we are ready to conduct these performance audits. From our side as a department, Chair, we will make ourselves ready once these engagements has been occurred in terms of also the guidelines that will be issued around that, so that we can then proceed once that resolution has been taken in itself. Another transversal resolution is also on item 4, page 3. And this is concerning the transfer of funds from departments to municipalities in the Western Cape. This is where the resolution was indicated, 4.3, that the committee engage with the respective departments and engage them on the funds that were transferred to municipalities. In our case, as a department, we do not transfer any funding to municipalities at this point in time, Chair. Then another transversal resolution, and that is the computization of assets. I'm struggling to say that word. Yes. And yeah, as we know, and I think it's now second, third year that the AG always reminds us, and as it says, repeated briefings in terms of when departments will then also report on the computerized assets in the asset register, and when this will become a requirement into the future. So the effective date still needs to be determined here. And again, the resolution was that the provincial treasury needs to be engaged so that they can also engage with departments on the readiness for this specific resolution. So like all other departments, Chair, we also await from National and Provincial Treasury as to no instructions policy has been issued to date in itself. So this is quite involved in itself. And once National Treasury has issued the policy, then we can also subscribe to our own policy, and then we can then start with the implementation thereof in itself. We can also speak to, should there be questions around this, what we are currently doing and what it will take us to get to this function of componentization of assets going forward. Then, Chair, on page 18, 11.4 of the committee's report, these are the list of information that's requested. The first report that was requested was a copy of the disability court case, as indicated by the head of the department during our session. And this was on page 80 of the annual report. Copy of this report to be provided, and this copy was provided in terms of case number 16678/2007 Disability Court judgment. In terms of that, the other information requested was on page 18, 11.4, a progress report on the organizational design process, which are highlighted under the bullet number 4 of the key risks considered and addressed during the year on the page 89 of the annual report. And we just highlighting the risks there again, Chairperson and members, just so that we are fully aware of the specific risk. And as it indicates, the major contributing factor to this risk is the limiting COE budget and the non-finalization of the organizational design process. It's further exacerbated by the increased demand for our services by the most vulnerable, and as it also related to the COVID-19 pandemic. It was reported during the Q4 EMCO, that is the Enterprise Risk Management Committee, that an official was allocated to work specifically on these organizational design investigation. Certain portion of the facilities for the 22-23 financial year, and the committee confirmed that this did not change the severity of the risk at that stage. The department's response is the progress made in respect of this department's organizational design investigation has been limited, hence the risk referred to still remains as is. Then, Chair, on page 18 also, 11.4, this is 11.4.3, a report which provides a detailed breakdown and further explanation of the contingent assets as highlighted under note 16.2 on page 195 of the annual report. As you can see, Chair, it's highlighted there. As per the contingent assets. You will see that there are 4 of these assets as indicated under note 16.2 of that annual report, of which 2 of these cases is still in progress, and the 2 at the bottom, those 2 cases has been closed, the files have been closed. So those 2 matters has been finalized in itself to date. And hence we are still looking at the progress with the other 2 matters as indicated there, Chair. The first matter is obviously dealing with an NGO in itself, and if there's further information on that, I'm sure we can give some information. And then the second one relates to staff fraudulently obtaining housing subsidy matter. As it states there, still awaits most recent updates from the state attorney. There's a possibility that it could have been prescribed. And the default judgment application is in process. And this is our working together with legal services in the Department of the Premier in terms of that. And as I've mentioned, the last 2 cases that was internal staff that has been finalized. Recovery of funds has been done. 25,000, the salary freeze that has been recovered. That matter is finalized, and then the 46,000 has also been deducted from the pension recovery because those staff members were dismissed at the time. So that matter is also concluded, Chair. Then the next matter is also on page 18, 11.4.4. A copy of the department's funding policy was requested from the committee, and the response is that that copy has been provided. It is the DSD policy on funding of NGOs, dated December 2017. And again, Chair, if there's any questions concerning that, the department would welcome responses if so required. And then lastly is the list of information requested on 11.4.5, which was this audit deviation file. And after collaborating with the committee administrative staff around that, this specific resolution was withdrawn and it was removed because nobody could really understand this request in itself. And yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I hope that gives a good account of the report as requested. Thank you.
Before I may allow maybe members of the committee to interact, just want to check, Honorable Minister, are there any remarks or comments from your side?
Honourable Chair, no, thank you. The team has presented the feedback. And I would just wish to say thank you for the opportunity. I'm sorry that I can't be in the room, but you may proceed accordingly. Thank you.
Thanks, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, I see Honorable Maseko in house.
Thank you very much, Chair. And again, from the department, thank you for a precise response to the resolutions of the committee. The first thing, I think the last about 2 years, the last financial year, we dealt with the issue of the triple BEE. And we really went deep into the understanding as it appears again and again. But like you highlighted, CFO, about the costly part of this certificate, what we wanted to find out from, I think from Scopa, if I remember well, is it shortchanging some of the SMMEs that would want to be there because it's costly to get the certificate? Or is it not challenging to them? And do we need to relook at this in opening the market to make sure that it is inclusive? Because if it's costly, it sort of shortchanges, I think, some that will want to have that certificate, but it's a little bit difficult for them. So I will take a cue from you, because you went deep into the details of the challenges that you've identified. And the other question, it will be, when we talk about the performance audit, why we asking the department is the concern that we've been raising also from the SCOPA is the cost attached to AG with the auditing as they go there. So if we are going to go into, we are going to say to the AG, look at the performance audit, the cost implication to the department also is what we need to find out. That as a department, do you see it viable that it will take time, because time with AG is money also? Now, do you see that being a challenge that can be there or not? So that when we engage with the AG also, we look at the whole scope of what might be a challenge as it comes in, because of we acknowledge the standing committees also looking at the performance. So we need not to have those blurry lines, and also to find out that when we are going to go into the performance, what is it that we are going to look at as we engage with the AG? But the concern from me, myself, it will be the issue of the cost implication of if you increase the scope of auditing to go to the performance also, because it doesn't mean that the AG will drop what will drop to the other side that is being doing. It will be the extra, of which we are bringing in another cost to the department. So that we have to look at that, where do we get the balance that we don't do that to the departments as we talk to their performance. And coming to the difficult weight that I know all the members threw out, and I'm happy to hear the department also, they struggle with that weight. Componentized assets. The AG talked to us that there is time allocated because they see there's the emerging risk that will be there. I just want to find out also the cost implication in doing that. versus what you are doing now. What AG is saying is going to happen versus what you are doing now. And the time allocated also with the systems in place from the government. Will that be possible that that you'll be in a space where that will be done? Because if you're waiting for the provincial treasury, that means there is a reason why that is taking long. And the communication between the AG, and it mustn't be a blank check of this has to be attended to, has to have a deadline, so that also you know that, by the way, I have to attend to this with immediate effect. Or because we don't want to see that there is the audit outcome that now it just came in, and you find that now for 2024 unit to be done is going to be one of the predetermined objectives that the AG is going to look at. So the timeline for that, is it there from the AG or not, so that also we can engage with the AG to find the rationale behind doing something that is different. And the last one, I think the last one, it will be on the unpacking of this organizational design unit in the departments, what it was fixing, and if now is still being delayed, and you saw the need for that to happen, but it gets delayed, and then also is a little bit of a challenge to say by when. What is it that it was fixing for it to be triggered to happen? I think that's all from me, Chair.
Honorable Kasim.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation as well. Mine is just to go back to 11.4. If I can just open the document. If we go back to 11.4 with regards to the fraudulent cases, we have cases that still has a status unchanged still since 2014. How is the status still unchanged, or what is the reason for the delays in these cases, and when was the last follow-up from the department on these cases, and what pressure is the department putting on these cases to conclude it? And then what is the outcome of the closed cases, these fraudulent closed cases, and what was found to determine closure on these two specific cases? If you can be more specific on this. Yeah, if you can just be a bit more specific on those 4 cases, that's all for now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kasim. Honorable America.
Okay. Sorry, Chair. Thank you. Chairperson, thank you so much for the opportunity. I want to latch on to what Honorable Sek was saying regarding the organizational redesign. It is stated that the investigation is limited and it remains a particular risk. And I would like to know what are the inhibiting factors that place limitation on the completion of the investigation. And then secondly, as Honorable Maseko was saying, is that how will the organizational redesign contribute to improve service delivery, if at all? And thirdly, if the risk still exists, does it have any current impact on the delivery of the service delivery mandate of the department? And then lastly, is the underspending of 20.3 million rand in that particular financial year mostly linked to program 2 and 3, although the department spent 99% of its budget, 20.3 million rand that's underspent on social welfare services and children and families has a significant impact on those particular sectors. Is there a possible link then between the current organizational structure and that particular underspending? Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Seleko.
Thank you very much, Chair. I beg for indulgence, Chair. I got on the bus while you were still in motion. So, but I'll just try to use my own understanding in what I'm getting in front of me. Yeah, just in terms of the triple BEE, DTIC is the custodian. And when in terms of your response that that they are engaging in a process of dealing with these contradictory issues that you have raised, and that is it's a very vague response, because we wait until when? Because the fact that there is an issue with the regulations, it has an effect on someone else. And like Member Masego was saying, also in terms of the cost for you to be certified. So has there been any engagements with DTIC in terms of looking at the timeframes by when, as they are the custodian of this particular legislation, to deal with the issues that are of problem? Because we cannot wait forever, because this risk cannot be mitigated by saying, no, we are dealing with this matter. They will deal with this matter until when? Can we just get specifics in terms of, is there any indication that maybe next year, this time, we would have dealt with the concerns that has been raised? Also, in terms of the second slide, they're saying, like, in terms of we are still waiting in terms, let's look in terms of the compliance. Yes, I understand, and I don't know what has been the rationale in terms of trying to quantify clean audits and trying to bring in audit performance, because I think the myth is there, like, clean audits does not directly imply that there is performance, and and for someone to say, okay, we are happy, we are fine with clean audits, let us go to performance management now. In terms of our financial systems, they are all intact. It's a norm, like the Premier has been saying last week. It's a norm, in terms of we only get clean audits in the province. But is there a place where we can quantify performance management? Because it will be difficult for us to go to say, let us move to the next level where we don't even know it's you can quantify performance in terms of what we want to achieve. But if there is somewhere somehow where whatever is expected from the department to do to mitigate this risk, then maybe we should get that information also and say, okay, no, it has been done in a particular way, and let us try to do it this side. And also in terms of componentization of assets. Yeah, it's very difficult to deal with a particular risk when someone says we are still waiting for national treasury, waiting for provincial treasury. So when there is a risk that one has, because this risk is not going to run away, this risk is not going to be going to disappear, because we are saying we are waiting for NT and we are waiting for PT. So, but while we are waiting, what is it that we are doing to deal with this particular risk? Because if it's NT, then we need to know how many engagement has been done with NT, and in terms of asking them for information and say, how are you going to, because what I'm getting is that it's an issue to deal with the policy. So, but we must first get the policy coming from NT or from PT. And then we as a department must also try to have our own policy that is going to speak to the policies that are getting from. So while the policy is not there, what is happening with this particular risk? Is this risk always going to be here? I just need some information in terms of that. And prescribed, possibility of a prescribed. Can you just elaborate more on that possibility? And what is the implications of that particular possibility of prescribed? Thank you very much.
Honorable Nkondlo. Is Honorable Nkondlo?
He's offline.
She's offline.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think it's online. Is it a previous hand, Honorable America, or is it a new hand?
Chairperson, I was struggling to lower my hand. It's lowered now. Thank you.
Okay. Honorable Masep.
Thank you. I think like Member Seleku mentioned that he has protective clothing as he's getting on the bus while he's on the road. The issue of the difficult weight, the componentization of assets is it's when the AG is prophesizing that it might be a risk in future. So he was on that space of prophesizing that it might be. But again, for the department, we acknowledge that it's because then NT and the PT, like you said, have to give the framework. There's no way they can do anything unless they've got that framework to make sure that they can have their own policy. So it will be on hold. It's like it's in the freezer now until they get that to make sure that that has to be dealt with. That's why the question was now, in the meantime, what is working so that when we get that framework, we compare to say, and I'm saying this, I'm sort of through your indulgence, Chair. I'm saying this because we're getting the complaints from municipalities, the entities of the cost attached to the AG. Now, if there is something that has to be added and we have to check as a standing committee to say that does anything that is coming from the AG going to have another cost implications to the department, and now the money that is have to go for service have to be direct to pay the cost that is attached to AG. We have also to look at that it mustn't be always yes ma'am, yes ma'am, yes sir. We have to go in depth to check at that. Thank you very much, Chair. Just wanted to give that clarity.
Thank you very much, Honorable Maseko. I think from my side, I'll probably come in by way of maybe follow-up questions based on the responses, but it's just one issue I would like to raise and maybe even get more clarity on is the issue of transfers to Beaufort West and Cederberg Municipality. I see the response from the department was that you seem not to have been, I think there might have been an issue that we wanted to get more clarity actually as to what happened to the money or how it was actually being used. But I think also last year, the person who raised that directly was Honorable Maseko. Now, I don't know, maybe it was not in your reports, maybe, but I'm sure it might have been about some transfer that maybe to do this municipality, whether how have they been used. I think it was a report, it was a request to that effect. Is so, but of course, maybe based on your response, we will be able to, yeah. Do the report.
Thank you so much, Chair. I think on the last question, Honourable Chairperson, we haven't transferred any money to Beaufort West. It's local government department, yeah. No. We don't generally transfer money to municipalities. We can, but we don't, yeah. And it's generally not a good idea. I think many years, like 15 years ago or something, the province transferred, DST transferred money to the city of Cape Town, and it got tangled up in their systems. And so it's not something we want to do. But thank you very much, honourable members. I think, Chair, through you, I'll ask the CFO to address the questions as far as possible, and then I'll come in at the end with any additional points, because most of it was of a technical nature. I think only maybe just a couple of things I can speak to up front, and that is firstly that on the question of organizational design and the delays around that, organizational design needed to look at our various units in the department. One was supply chain, to see if they've got enough capacity, and they've completed that process, and we've reached a point where there's not going to be any changes at this stage. The second one is to look at capacity in the regions, because the population has increased in the 10 years since this department's organizational design was produced. And that was based on a social worker to population ratio at the time that was acceptable for that population size. The population in the province has grown by 2 million people since that time, since 2010, and our department hasn't grown to actually match that. We have got additional staff because we took over BOSASA's centres, so we had to add several hundred staff members to insource, as it were, the running of Horizon and Clan William. But that is the only really substantial increase that the department's had in its staff numbers since 2010, when we had the original organizational design. So OD, or organizational design for the province, was supposed to be looking at how we can expand our footprint in our local offices to meet the demand on the ground, because our social workers are becoming overloaded. So that process has been underway for some time, but it has been, I think, quite a slow process, firstly because it's technically complex, but also because currently there is a very tight control over expansion of posts in the public service that's been imposed by Treasury and DPSA due to the financial crunch that the country is sitting in since the COVID meltdown. So the financial implications of the COVID disaster have meant that we can barely afford the current wage bill. Which means, and on top of that, of course, the wage negotiations continue to push the wage increases quite high. So the Treasury and DPSA have been quite strict about allowing additional posts. So we are in quite a difficult position, because on the one hand, we are trying to expand the department to meet demand, but on the other hand, we don't have the resources to be able to do that. So that is a risk that isn't going to go away just yet, until there's more resources available. We are obviously trying to work with the NGO sector to supplement what the department does, but there the money is also running out. So yeah, it's a very bad. It's probably our number one risk at this point in time. But so that was the one issue. The second issue was the underspending of 23 million, which Honourable Member America mentioned. That was largely due to the compensation situation, because we've got a very tight control on compensation spending from Treasury. We are not allowed to reassign any of the money to any other purpose. And during the year last year, or the year that was under review, we had a huge number of early exits and early retirements and resignations. So the time lag between people leaving and the time it takes to then fill the post means that there's money that doesn't get spent. And of course, then we can't allocate that funds to something else. So that money is primarily because of unexpectedly high levels of people leaving. There were also some deaths as well, and so on. So we did have quite a sharp number of exits that year, and we can't fill posts as fast as we're losing people. So I think those are just two things I wanted to mention up front. Then the rest I will ask the CFO and his director to speak to. Thanks, Chair.
CFO.
Thank you, Chair. I will try and be not too technical as much as possible. But I think the members also assisted me already with answering some of the questions. Thank you. You know, Chair, when it comes to the BBBE certification, and yes, the cost is a major factor. I think, I'm not so sure, but I think the city of Cape Town actually tried that, and it resulted in millions in itself. And if this is a yearly exercise that needs to be done, and exactly, I think your point is we are moving to performance auditing in terms of that. The question of clean audits, does it actually indicates performance? And do we spend the time and money on that when we cannot really say that this is giving us, you know, a performance indicator in itself? How does it affect maybe the SOEs? I don't think so, Chair, in our case. And why I'm saying this is that if we look at our stats, and this is what we put in our annual report, is that we have quite a good target that we reach in terms of our SOEs, black-owned females, and so forth. And I think that gives us, you know, a good indication of where the market is going, especially in terms of our procurement and what we buy in itself. So yeah, there's quite it's quite a matter of, you know, when the legislators and the custodians have a contradiction around this type of thing, it then becomes an issue for you know, for the departments and the entities in itself. As to when specifically, we can't say. I think year on year, we do have engagements. And the good thing about this is that in our province, the provincial treasury actually heads up this issue transversely. So we have what we call our CFO forums that we engage on a quarterly basis, and these things are discussed, and we get progress. And you know, the provincial accountant general that sits in the provincial treasury has meetings with the national treasury around this type of thing. So yeah, when it comes to legislation, I'm sure we all know time is an issue in terms of that. So we are trying to do as far as we possibly can to remain compliant as far as we possibly can, and hence I think we opted together with the AG that for now we will just report on in our annual report as indicated in terms of that, and that we hope that with the certification there will be an outcome soon for us around this. Just sorry, I can't give more specifics around, but yeah, I think we agree with the cost, and that is also a major issue around it. And the thing is, it's also starting afresh. You know, the other thing is we're not sure how far back we need to go as well, if that's the case, because remember, we must report. If we now in 23, we must report on 21, 22 type of scenario, and then in the 22, 23 year, we can then only indicate after the annual report has been submitted. Only then we can place this certification that we need to do in itself. So there's a time also issue that that we need to have the records and all those type of things in itself. Yeah, so I hope hopefully that gives some answer to that. And yes, the engagement with the stakeholders, as a department, we need to work via the provincial treasury, national treasury, to speak to DTIC as well, in itself. And yeah, any direct communication has not really worked for any department, and hence we're dealing with it transversely at this point in time, in itself. Okay, the second one is performance auditing, and I think I've touched on that as well. It's going to be a costly exercise. At the moment, we already sit with, if we just look at our non-financial information, because it's more compliance audit that is being done, and every year we together, with the AG comes and they decide how many programs they're going to audit. Now that is a cost in itself, and that's time. Now, if we're going to then go further in terms of performance auditing and the number of, engagements and the work that it entails, it's just going to add to that in itself. So at the moment, I think we okay with what we call, targets that we set, and we need to report on those targets, and the AG would then also give their opinion, and I think this is also something that we must understand, that even with the audit of non-financial information, it's now, I don't know how many years that we've been told that it will become part of the audit report, and so forth. It still remains an opinion that is expressed. So we don't know when it's going to be part of the annual report. In other words, it can then become an expression of a qualification or a disclaimer or a clean audit or whatever. At the moment, it's just something that appears in the management report as an opinion in terms of that. So that's also, I think, a specifics that still needs to be sort of clarified, and a date needs to be set to say, as from this financial year, we're going to then place this opinion in the annual report. So far it is still based on the compliance issues in terms of the performance, and yeah, the auditing obviously will entail more cost. Maybe then there might be less programs, and then as we know, when the AG does an audit, they have a special unit for that, especially when it comes to performance auditing. So I think at the moment they work on a random sample basis. So sometimes they have a team that comes from Pretoria that does specific performance audits, and they do it on specific matters in itself. So I would foresee, Chair, that the same scenario will be followed once this also becomes applicable, that they most probably will take certain departments at random and sample them, and then do maybe certain programs to see what that in itself holds, and how does it speak to departmental audit fees, if one can call it that, and whether we can still do all this within the time frame allocated, because legislation says we need to issue these reports at the given time in itself. Yeah, I hope I've touched on all the questions around that in itself. The components, with the assets, yeah, they also, I think, cost implications will be affected, Chair, in itself. And sorry that we need to say every time that we're waiting on National Treasury and we're waiting on Provincial Treasury. What we can say as a department, yes, we can start with this process, but it will be manual, and it's going to be more costly and time consuming, because at the moment, all our assets that we buy, we actually account for them as per a unit. And if I can give a simple example of an example here is if we take a desktop computer. Now, a desktop computer consists of a monitor, a CPU, a keyboard, and a mouse. Now, we would then, if we buy those components in itself, then we buy it as a unit, and then we would then register them in our asset register as a unit, in terms of that, and then we would just look at the useful life over a span of time. But when it comes to this componentization, then we need to look at, how long does a mouse has a useful life? How does that relate to the monitor, which have a different useful life? And now we need to deal with the depreciation factors around that specific one. And now automatically you can understand how much work they entails if we're going to do it manually. Because we've also discovered that the Logos system that we are using is not going to be fully functional the way it is now to even bring in the assets as such so that we can do this function itself. I'm always under the impression that, when National Treasury sits down and they start to issue the policy and the guidelines, they normally sit down with the AG as well and say, right, okay, now that the policy is out, the guidelines is there, how long will implementation take? And I'm hopeful that it will be over a phased approach, that we can do it, because if we look at this, I mean, we are social development. If I just think of health and those type of assets, then complications comes. And we must remember that as a government department, we're moving towards accrual accounting. We're not there yet. However, the AG wants to get us there quicker, I suppose, in itself. So we're still on modified cash standards. And the National Treasury is the custodian of that, those standards and how they implement those standards so that it can bring us to accrual accounting eventually, in itself. So yes, so what we need to do as a first step, we need to start identifying the assets first of all, and we need to agree then. And this is where the policy comes in. We agree that this asset needs to be componentalized in itself. And then once we're done, now we must determine the policy in itself. And then we need to look at, when do we start reporting on this? Do we start when the asset was bought, which could be 2-3 years ago? Do we start now from, an inception date in itself? And that means the historical asset register will be affected, because now it's almost prior year entries that needs to be done over a period of time. So it's quite involved in itself, and it's quite involved, Chair. I'm not saying we can't do it. I think, but it's going to take time, and it's going to be a manual transaction as we go along in terms of that. And yes, that cost will be there, not just in terms of physical money, but time of workers and staff, as well as the AG coming and charging us for that. So, I think the OD design, I think the HOD has spoken to that. I hope that is covered together with the 20 million. In terms of the fraud cases, the status, yes, that is the latest status that we've presented today in itself. And as I've mentioned, the closed cases, the one relating to to Mr. Martin and Mr. Jarvis. And sorry, we were not supposed to even mention the names here. But this matter was basically where a government vehicle was used, and they sort of did not comply to the trip authority. In other words, where they indicated where they need to travel, they didn't. So that in itself becomes when someone else, yeah, and it costs government. So the matter was taken to arbitration and so forth. And then the sanction was that they, they were sanctioned with work unpaid, yeah, and so.
Just want to find out on this case. I know it's closed. Just interesting. It's to the total of 25,000. What type of a trip with the car is that? Is it for a certain period that they were doing that? And if that's the case, were they doing a job? It's just that because they didn't record the trips, that is why they were they had to pay that. And if that's the case, that's why I say sometimes the law is the issue of the AG will say, no, it doesn't mean that the job was not done, was done. But the process to get there was not followed. That is why you get the audit outcome like that. Now, is it the same case scenario that it wasn't like they were doing their own thing? It's just that they didn't follow the procedure of signing and recording their trips as they were doing the job for the department.
That through your chair, yes, correct. So what happens when you sign a trip authority and your supervisor and manager approves that, then you're supposed to stay within that. But if you want to deviate, you need to then get permission again. So that's the process. Now that wasn't done. Now I think in this case, it was either an accident that happened or there was a break-in of the vehicle, and that's when we discovered this vehicle was not supposed to be there in itself. So in terms of the cost, most probably the cost of that deviation was much less than this. But that was the sanction, because now it was the sanction that, you need to forfeit your salary for this type of thing. And that's why we can close the matter now in terms of that in itself. The second case is within our finance unit, where they actually 4 staff members colluded. And when there's collusion, it's very difficult because I see the document and the next one see the document and they all just collude. And so they registered an NGO in itself. They registered one that was fictitious, and they actually paid this NGO, which was to themselves in itself. So they were dismissed, and we then deducted the money from the pension payouts.
Is that allowed now by law to deduct from a person's pension?
In that time, we could still do that. Okay. That was that time. But then when the law came in with that court case, we can't, because we must get permission from so that's the case.
Yes, Honorable.
So in scenarios like this, that managed to go through the pipelines to an extent that the fictitious NGO, blah, 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 the loophole is identified. So the department have a system in place to close shops on this, on scenarios that can happen like this one. After that happened.
Yeah, maybe I'm going to ask the director, just because he was personally involved in it.
When there's collusion, it's normally very difficult to pick up when people are where there's a chain of events that are happening. We're segregating duties, but however, and also through our disclosures on RWAPs, a person whether that person has got conflicting, but that's dependent on disclosure. If the person doesn't want to disclose the information, then the risk still exists. So all we did in our processes was to segregate functions over a wider area, in order to pick up that. So bank registration is a complete unit on its own, whilst payment is another section. But in the payment section in itself, there's 3 individuals that needs to activate something through that process. In this instance, they were found guilty by court. So I know some of them served.
This Saya matter, ne?
Yeah, the last one. The last one on the list.
Ayoba.
Ayoba. They were found guilty in court, and some of them received sentence in this instance. Thank you.
And Chair, if I can continue, the other matter of the fraudulent housing subsidy claim, Bonitoon, this is where an employee falsely claimed housing subsidy. And that was a fraudulent matter. The employee was dismissed, and hence this case is still continuing. The member asked about the possible prescription, and this is just in terms of the time that elapsed in terms of information and activity that happens on the case in itself, that can possibly lead to this. And this is how the advice that we get from our legal services that works directly with the state attorney in itself. The other matter of the South African Youth Adventures, this is basically misappropriation of funds. So this is funds that we transfer, and then that funds is misappropriated in itself. And this is the matter that's still currently, as it indicates here, waiting confirmation from the state attorney. And this matter, yes, has been unchanged for quite a while now, in terms of all the matters that is appearing, before the courts, as it indicates here. Steps is that application needs to be served on the defendant, and this is sometimes out of our control because of this legal services with the state attorney, that they need to do it, and sometimes the state attorney needs to employ also legal counsel to deal with this matter.
When coming to scenarios like this, the cost of the case itself versus the for the instance, the misappropriated amount, how do you say, you know what, this is really now costing me too much than I anticipated, I need to take a decision? Do you have like a threshold where you can take that decision to make sure that this matter gets to be closest if the person has been dismissed, or you just have to move forward with it until it gets to be finished? Because sometimes it's I can't say it's not worth it on record, but if you didn't have the cameras and everything, I'll say sometimes it's not worth it because you spend more than what you anticipated. Like this, if it's still with the state attorney, it's going to go on. It might be more than that, 1 point something. Or it's a matter of the principal can't put the cost to the principal.
Correct, through your chair, yes. Exactly the point. I think we've now reached an agreement that I think cases less than 3,000, the state attorney already said we're not even going to touch those things. We can deal with it. But I think in this case, we still reliant on the state attorney that will then say to us, look, this matter is prolonging too long. It's going to cost us much more in terms of what we want to claim here in itself. And unfortunately, that's why we work via legal services with state attorney, so that they can indicate this to us. So in a way, it's just that is the process that we need to follow within the province, and all departments goes through this process, so that we can satisfy ourselves before we attempt to write off these type of things.
Been listening to the CFO. He's really not technical, and I can follow. But the CFO is not answering my question. prescription, possible prescribed, or let me rephrase what I'm trying to say. Because if you read in terms of the action say you need to recover the 60,000. That's what the action says. So let me put it simple. Has the money been recovered? Yes or no? The second one, housing subsidy.
The one who falsely claimed for a house,
Yes.
while he is not qualifying for the house.
Yeah, I would just want to know if that money has been recovered. And then if not, what is the and what is the implication of the possible prescribed? So does it mean that we are not going to get that money?
I get your question. CFO?
Which one is this?
That's it.
Director?
Yeah. Let me just respond to that because I've asked the information while I was sitting here around the update on this case. This person was dismissed in 2021. And they've indicated that, as a matter of fact, this debt had not prescribed. And we've recovered money from his pension. There's a balance of 2,000 Rand outstanding. So most of the money has been recovered.
That was a very swift response. That was a very swift response. Now, CFO, are you still proceeding with some answers? Because I see Honorable Nkondlo is back online. Maybe you don't want to listen to her, or you want to finish. You want to finish. Okay.
Yeah, if I may, I hope I think almost done. Because I think I've tried to incorporate all the answers. There was just the issue also of the assets and how long we're going to wait and whether this risk is going to disappear. I think in a way that has been answered, that it is a risk that will just materialize once the Auditor General starts to engage with it. So until such time that the Auditor General and the National Treasury makes that decision on the policy and all those type of things, only then can they start to audit this in itself. And the risk here is more on the accounting side than whether we comply on an accounting basis rather than actually performance in itself, when it comes to that in itself. So yeah, thank you, Chair. I think that.
Thank you very much, CFO. Honorable Nkondlo.
Yes, Chair.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
We
thank you,
tried
Chair.
to call you earlier on. We could not get you.
Yes, I think my connectivity was weak because we're load shedding. I have 3 questions. I'm hoping that I'm not repeating questions that may have been answered. Pardon me if that is the case. I want to start on the last one on the funding policy to NPOs for social services. I just want to understand from the department that given that this policy is of 2017, and I'm assuming that to date, which is almost, I think, 5 years in its implementation, I would want to understand, one, whether there has been any evaluation to date of this policy, just even internal, to see whether, it is assisting in terms of the funding objectives and principles that you would have designed as part of this funding policy, given that at least between 5 to 10 years are always policy cycles that most public sector organizations would look at, to sort of evaluate and at a bigger scale, maybe review,
a policy so that, you can look at any adaptations that are required. So that is one. I'm not even asking something specific to that policy. Just want to understand where it's at the current moment, given it's already 5 years to date as we are speaking from the time it was adopted. And then my second one, Chair, is on this compliance and performance audit, because I think as South Africa is actually learning based on evidence of both those that are performing well and those that are poorly performing in as far as compliance reporting as a standard, and why the basis of performance audits to sort of match up some of the gaps that would have been picked up, in the compliance audit frameworks. I'm interested to know from the department whether the conversations in this specific department, which is a service delivery interfacing department, that whether at this point, together with AG, have they actually prepared, if this department were to go on to performance audit, what would that be involving? What elements would involve? Because I would understand that in the main, what we have been doing as part of compliance audit in any way, which is the program side of things, would actually be amongst the biggest part, is actually amplifying more the finance side in the compliance approach. It's more elevating now the program side of looking intrinsically into those. So I'm interested if there has been any of those conversations, and if the department can indulge us of what is their take, if they were, and their readiness, if any, if such tomorrow it would be said it is starting. My last one, Chair, is that firstly, I think what the department raises, I think in its first two sentences in their response, I'm not clear in understanding. They talk about National Treasury as an authority, of the reporting in terms of annual report, and then the BBBE. If they can just clarify me, in a very simple way, what exactly do they mean? Because I would understand from the BBBE Act, those type of custodianship of such a policy are very clear. So I'm trying to understand what they were trying to communicate with those two sentences, and to say at this point, with all, which is what Member Seleko raised earlier on. With that said, at this point, what instrument is this particular department utilizing to report on its BBBE efforts? If the concern that they are raising is the template, or is actually the requirement of a BBBE certificate, over and above that, if that gets to be answered at any time, it is answered. What then is their current reporting method on their efforts on BBBE? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nkondlo, HOD CFO.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I'm sure the HOD will also come in terms of the funding policy. And then just in terms of the most probably the last one, if I can start there with, again, the BBBE, National Treasury. And as we've indicated, National Treasury is the authority of the BBBE reporting template that departments use in itself. And that is the template that we've been using as part of the compliance in itself. The commission, however, in terms of the reporting as the authority, is prescribing the certification thereof in itself, and that is the differences in terms of that, and hence we need to work with National Treasury, and National Treasury is working with the commissioner around this type of thing. So, Chair, we've been having this when we do speak to the commissioner. then they were just quite clear in terms of what they require. However, in terms of when we speak to National Treasury, and remember, National Treasury speaks to the Auditor General around this type of thing. And hence, we could then resolve that in terms of our reporting on the template, which we do, was seen to be sufficient until such time we can then sort out the contradiction around the two processes in terms of the certification, that we then continue to use this instrument as the member has requested. So that instrument would be then the template that we report on in our annual report in terms of that, and it speaks to the SMMEs, the SOEs, as required in terms of that. Our provincial treasury has actually a system where they actually track this on a monthly basis. So we get an inside report from provincial treasury, and we can actually also track the usage of these organizations and service providers in itself. Then, Chair, the compliance and the performance audit service delivery engagement with the AG. To my knowledge, we didn't look at that specifically. So I can say that we didn't have a specific engagement with the AG, as far as I'm concerned, around the performance audit. Except, as I mentioned, there is cases where the Auditor General will say that there's a team coming from National that will then look at the specific performance matter in itself. I think there's been a couple on the IT side that they've done, and then we would then get the transversal report around that in itself. But I can't say that we've specifically engaged in this matter as yet. Thank you, Chair. I don't know if actually you want to speak to the policy.
The question whether the funding policy has been updated. Yes, it has. Yeah. We also had to update it because of the structural changes in the department that occurred when the Chief Directorate Welfare Services was split from the Chief Directorate for Children and Families and ECD. So yeah, it has been updated both to address that and also the issue with transfers versus goods and services.
Thank you very much, HOD. I've seen there's now another presentation that we'll have based on 2.2 on the agenda. I just want to, before we get that presentation, HOD and the department, I know you've been hearing us talking a lot about this thing of performance audit. Rest assured, it's not something that we've created out of our own. It's something that when we ask questions, for example, your department has probably have clean audit. We are actually on your 10th, if you're actually more than the 10th clean audit, Yes. Now, then of course, question will be asked, and also some of the ideas even came from some of the members of the from within the sector of auditing, especially audit committee members, where they say, look, we must find a way of moving beyond this clean audit. Because we were asked, I remember one of the audit committee members said, he made an example with the Department of Safety and Security. He says that department has also been excelling in getting clean audit, also probably more than the 10th time. But he asked the question, are we safe? Now, obviously, it talks to the performance of that department, as an example, Department of Safety. Then there was a question that was asked as to maybe the one way of looking into making sure that we don't only achieve clean audit, but also the performance is being seen. Then the idea of a performance audit team. But obviously, it's something that has not been done in government circles. But based on some people who knows about the idea, they say it can be done. So we will wait patiently for the time when it's actually going to be done. So it's not something, as I said, that fall from the sky or is just maybe a figment of our imagination. We are trying to see how can we move beyond the clean audit. I want us to move to the next slide, but I will allow, if I've happened to provoke ideas on the issues I've raised, to allow it. I'll allow the HOD, then I would give Honorable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Just to say that there is already the auditing of performance information. So the performance information we provide is audited by the Auditor General to make sure that the information is actually true and correct. And I think that does contribute towards monitoring of performance, because if we are reporting that the department has done certain things, and the AG can confirm that what we've reported is actually true, then it does give some assurance on performance. So I think it's important not to forget the performance information aspect. And of course, that's only as useful as the performance indicators are in terms of giving a report on the department's performance. So my difficulty in understanding a performance audit will be how they go further than that. I know they already started some of that where they give a bit of value add in their reporting. They started that this year where they started commenting on some of the issues that came up in the service delivery environment in the audit report, which was kind of useful. So they're bringing in a little bit of a qualitative angle where they, for example, commented on some of the logistical challenges around food relief distribution and so on. So some of that did feature in the audit report, but we don't really know what a full-blown performance audit would look like, and it would be very difficult in our environment. So I think it has to be very carefully conceptualized, because a performance audit in the environment of social development would be totally different from a performance audit in the Department of the Premier, for example, or the Treasury, or Parliament for that matter. So it's very difficult to say what that would be. But I mean, our indicators are performance oriented, because we don't count the number of meetings we've had or the number of annual reports we've finished or the number of whatever's reports delivered. We report on the number of people who've been assisted or on the number of children placed in care. So there is a performance element already that the Auditor General then checks for its credibility. So I don't think we are so far away from something that could be said to be assurance on performance. I think there is some assurance on performance.
Very much. I think when we started to have a voice in the now SAPEC, we used to call it the APEC. It was the late Makwetu still alive, and we were saying that, attaching the clean audit to service delivery, I think we are at a stage that we have to look the value for the money in service delivery, and versus when you get the clean audit. But it had to go with also consequence management. So that's why the AG also, we were pushing from the association in this country that there need to be consequences, because you get the Western Cape doing brilliant, and then you'll get to another province, they're not doing brilliant. We want to level up in Western Cape, but you still have the other province somewhere that you will find that, it's lacking behind. It doesn't know how does it feel to have a clean audit. So you have to say what needs to happen, because you can't come back and listen to the same story and say, yeah, they did that, but there's nothing. So you get the AG without the teeth. So you said develop the teeth. You need to bite one way or another. So that's why we talked about the consequence management from the APEC, that AG, you need also to have the teeth. But now the issue of this, so I was asking the cost implication to say, how are we going to go about, because I think one of the resolutions to chair, we need to engage with the AG. We went, I think I was fortunate that we went to Kenya, where the AG is a department within the government in Kenya. So they for the whole year have to look at the auditing and also the service delivery. And in Kenya, when coming to, if there is a corruption that happened, the standing committee of the public accounts, they asked the AG, how did you miss that? because you are full-time, we give you the budget. Now it doesn't become the department's responsibility, municipality's responsibility. The allocation from the treasury, from national, gives them the money to look at each and every supply chain management departments, from the concept of the project until it's executed. They've got that responsibility to monitor each and everything, of which I tend to believe that is one thing that as a standing committee we have to look to have a study taught together, details of that, to check how do they go about the allocation from the national versus all these municipalities, entities, and the departments, to give the auditor general, if it can be something that we have to look at in South Africa. It can be maybe under the chairperson that we have a legislation that can push from national. And our to say that, colleagues, let's do it this way, then we are not going to complain about the cost implications. Any change that comes from AG, it will be welcomed, and it will be a positive plus in this country to add value. Unlike now that am I going to take the money from 2 social workers to give to AG, or I'm going to take shortchange a certain region with 5? Because when you look at the cost also of the AG chairperson, they increase, but the budget goes down. So there's not that balance of saying now, how are we going to? So it's a conversation also, resolution chair, that we have to engage with AG, that it increases, but the budget goes down. When are they saying we are part of the struggles that we have in this country for the fiscal or the allocations that are going to each and every department? Because even the municipalities that are the poorest, that cannot pay electricity, also they want their funds when they go for the audit report. But the question, you triggered that. I didn't want to talk about that. Question that I wanted to ask is, in schools, we are trying in education, they are trying to be reactive with anticipations of the students that they can get yearly, with the rapid schools and classes and all that. Now, you mentioned the challenge of the social workers allocations, and that it's been 4 years that that is why we are doing the organizational structure that you have to look to. That it will be dealing with I suspect that will deal with the problem, maybe where there is short comings when coming to allocation of the social workers. But the reactive way, that's it. When you are going, because this is not going to stop. You've got the budget cuts, but you're still going to get the demand as the communities, they grow. And what innovative way maybe that we will have to look at in making sure you react, or you become proactive in being able to absorb the shock of the demand as it happens throughout? Because as we speak now, and I can make an example. In a municipality that there was a case, and as a constituency, I needed a social worker. And then when I needed a social worker, it had to be social worker, I think, had to come from the side of Langeberg, was somewhere there. But when I was thinking the area that has to operate in versus issues that are happening, because as a MPL, I know what is happening sometimes. I said, it's heavy on social workers to be able to traveling, going to deal with those issues, and traveling back home after you have seen what you have seen or dealt with what you have seen. So it's one of the issues that I'm trying to find out now in really absorbing that shock. How, when you do the reorganization of this, how are organizational design, how is that going to be proactive in dealing with what I'm throwing to you now? Do you foresee that we'll ever have a space where you'll get a taste that HOD, you can say, at least, you know what? I've achieved the 80% of trying to cover the demand that is there for in the social workers within this province? I know it's a huge question for now with the 20 reds that you have while you need about the 1 million. So
Aseko Honorable Seleku and Honorable Nkondlo.
No, Chair. I think we dealt with the issue of the performance audit outcomes. And I think that is one of the bad things when you do good. You need to raise the bar. And then, unfortunately, it's not a decision that the department has to decide on whether they're going to go the performance audit route or not. The AGSA will determine that at a particular stage, not now, because as much as there is a province that is doing well, and there are some provinces that are lacking, I think for us to come to the same level in terms of audit outcomes, then I think that's when the time will come for the AG to decide. No, now we have reached our top. Let us go to the next level. And I think that is just it's good when someone actually is an acknowledgement that something is happening and that we are happy with what you are currently doing in terms of your financial systems. But let us go to the next level. But it's not for the department to decide, but it's for the AG to say maybe we should treat Western Cape differently because they are doing something good.
Honorable Nkondlo. Honorable
Thank
Nkondlo.
you. No, thank you, Chair. Mine is just a small one. It's not even on the performance audit. I would be interested if the document, the policy that was shared with us, is actually the one that the HOD refers to as updated, and if in his context updated means it's a review of the policy, because I hear him saying they had to review because of some organizational restructuring things. So I'm just trying to understand whether that is equates what a policy review is. The update and a policy review, are those two things the same in terms of his response? But I just would like to check if indeed the copy we received is the reviewed one. Thanks.
Chairperson. So it's partly the new one, partly the old one. There's a updated, it comes with the updated TPA template and so on, but the policy's also been updated as well. And that one is still in sign-off. So that part is still being finished. But so it's a mix. It's some of the stuff is some of the old policy still, because it's being updated. It's been updated more than once. So this is partly update, but there's a newer version that's about to be signed off that will be added to that. So as soon as it's ready, we can give it to it'll be ready probably in the next few weeks. So we can give it to the committee once it's done.
Actually, can I just add? Also part of the renewal of the policies, looking at the national funding policy. So also to look at our provincial policy, if it's aligned to the national policy. So that's all part of the process.
Thanks. And as to the other question, Chairperson, from Honourable Maseko, the department is busy with looking at innovative solutions to try and supplement its or multiply the impact of the social service professionals. And there's various things. One is to try and bring in more social auxiliary workers where we've got vacant posts, because some of the posts stayed unfilled. They cost less than social workers, so we can bring some of them in, but obviously there's some work that they can't do, the social workers have to do. So there's that. We are also repurposing some posts that were previously for community development work that we now are going to try and translate without increasing our total headcount in the province. So some of that will hopefully we can find a way of getting a loophole in a sense around the containment on establishment that is being pushed by DPSA and Treasury to some degree. But it's very limited. There's not a lot of room to move there. The other area is to try and increase the impact and the footprint of the NGOs. We have in the past couple of years, we've increased funding to child protection quite a lot, but it's not keeping up with the needs either. So what we've been looking at, as well as community-based child and youth care programs, where community-based child and youth care workers are also brought in, and they don't have as much of a salary as social workers, so we can get more of them on the ground. So that also supplements the work of the social workers, and then also getting volunteers and programs in partnership with community structures and so on to refer cases and so on. So building referral pathways between schools, between religious organizations and other civil society role players, so that we can also get stronger referral systems or referral pathways going to try and make sure that the social workers cases can get picked up more quickly and effectively. So we are trying all sorts of different things to make our net wider, and to try and make up for the fact that we don't have as many social workers as we need. The difficult thing, though, is that there are certain types of work that by law only social workers can do, like child protection matters. When it goes to the children's court, it has to be a social worker. So unfortunately, there's no shortcuts for some of it. So where we can free them up from some of the kind of running around work, then it gives them the chance to focus on doing the work that only they can do. So that really is the kind of approach we've been taking. I should also add, sorry, Chair, that the New Children's Act and the New Social Assistance Act were also intended to try and reduce the burden on social workers by shifting cases of children placed with family away from the children's courts, so that when a child is placed with family, the family can apply for a child support top-up grant. So then they don't go through the children's court to get an order just so they can get a foster grant, because that was, in many cases, there were children's court inquiries opened, which went through a whole children's court process for a foster care order so that they could get a foster grant, where the child may not necessarily need to be placed in terms of an order. So the idea was to create this mechanism in law where children could be placed with family without going through children's court and getting a children's court order. Then they can apply for a child support top-up grant, which is nearly as much as a foster grant. I think that's the intention, but the downside is that, first of all, the only people who are eligible for the child support grant in the first place can apply for a child support top-up grant, which means a lot of families may now think twice about taking in a child if they are just over the threshold for a child support grant, because then they're not going to get anything to help them, whereas before they could at least get the foster grant. So I don't think that was necessarily a very smart policy choice. I think maybe, I don't know whether the idea was that hopefully they would then unburden the state of some of the responsibility for those children, but I think it may backfire, because what may then happen is we may get reluctance from family members to take in children, which means then those children get pushed back into the foster care system, and it's putting more pressure on foster placements of non-family placements, because we're struggling to find parents who want to be safety parents and foster parents. So I don't think that was a good call, and I think they're going to need to change that sooner or later, because actually since they passed this legislation, and we were really hoping to see the number of children in foster care going down, the number has actually sharply gone up. We've now got nearly 40,000 children in foster care. At the beginning of last year, we only had 35,000 children in foster care. So there's been an increase of nearly 5,000 in 1 year. We don't know for sure what the reason is for this. There could be various reasons, but it certainly isn't showing that the legislation is having the desired effect, because this legislation was introduced because of the High Court process in the North Gauteng High Court around the foster care backlog, where the national minister had been taken to court by the Centre for Child Law and was compelled to find a comprehensive legal solution to the foster care backlog problem. And this was the comprehensive legal solution, but it doesn't seem like it's actually having the effect it was supposed to have. So I'm quite worried about the situation we're sitting with at the moment. And we have raised it nationally. And I think that they're going to have to review this because I don't think it's working. I don't know what the other provinces are looking like, but I don't think it's working here. I'm not sure whether it's better elsewhere, but it doesn't seem like it to me. We will get a clearer picture, I think, in the next year or so. But the idea was to try and reduce the burden on the social workers and the courts, which was causing the backlog in the first place. So yeah, I think that is something we have to watch carefully.
Shodi. Now, honorable members, there is a presentation we have received from the audit committee. We can allow the chairperson to talk through it as he is, and thereafter, if we think there are questions we'd like to ask, I will allow that opportunity to be given. Huh? No, you do. Do you have? Yeah. No. Okay. You're going to ask to make more copies. With it's not there. Got one. So I think it's more they've got enough. Yeah. Chairperson?
Yeah.
Are you in, Chairperson?
Yes, I'm here. Good morning, Chair. From one chair to the other.
Please go ahead, Chair.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members, and the Minister, HOD, and your team. It's a very short presentation. There were two questions raised by the committee to the audit committee. Just the first question was 11.3.1, which is asked that the audit committee brief the committee on how it managed emerging risks for the 21-22 year. So firstly, just a point of clarity, Chair, is that the audit committee has an oversight function over risk. We don't manage it. You could hear now in this meeting that the management has got quite a good grasp of the risks. Of the 6 emerging risks that we've raised, 4 raised actually by AXA as well, and all of these risks has been extensively discussed now in this meeting. So I don't think I need to elaborate on that. It's things like the compensation of assets, the BBE regulations, etc. But from an audit committee perspective, we are, for our oversight role, we actually have quarterly meetings with the department and also have closed session with the ERM, the Enterprise Risk Management. And also, where necessary, we have actually every quarter a closed session with the HOD where relevant matters are discussed. The discussions, Chair, are very similar to what we've just had, and the same questions and challenges to the department are posed to the department by the audit committee. The second question, which is on the next slide, Chair, if I can just deal with that, was 11.3.2. And just a question was about the assurance gap. And it's not 15%, that says actually 50% for that specific year. Just as a bit of a background, Chair, we've just had now heard extensive discussions how expensive it is to have assurance. So what internal audit and department and province has done, it started a combined assurance framework throughout all departments within the province. Now what this does is it measures levels of assurance, where the first line of defense is management controls. The second line of defense typically would be internal audit, the auditor general, etc. And then the third line of defense or oversight functions is like yourselves, and the audit committee. So this does help and does assist the audit committee and also the department, make sure that we don't have too many risky assurance gaps. I can just tell you, Chair, that the current coverage, and I've confirmed that again with the Chief Audit Executive earlier on, is 65%. and which is fairly adequate. Just on the coverage, it's fairly, the 65% is fairly in line with other departments where I'm involved in. As I said, the moment you go too high on these things, it becomes very, very expensive, as we've just heard, for instance, with the Auditor General. And then there's just a last slide that I maybe just want to share quickly with you. This is a question that should be posed with the Auditor General. It was number 13.3.3. I see it has been removed from the agenda, but maybe just a quick feedback from our side. It is a methodology by the Auditor General of South Africa. We do engage with the Auditor General did engage with the Auditor General for the first time on this about 2 weeks ago in a joint planning session with them. But at this point in time, this differential audit methodology is not applicable to this department. We challenge from an audit committee perspective just the value that it brings to the table and also the cost and cost containment regarding this methodology. But I think it might be a good idea if they come and explain that themselves. Chair, but as I say, I was very fortunate. I think most of the items has been already covered by the committee extensively. So I'm open for questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. That was brief and straight to the point. Are there any comments maybe from the department first, or if there is not, then we'll allow the members?
Thank you, Chair.
HOD?
Sorry, I moved over here. I'm just trying to plug in.
Sure.
No, I think from our side, we work well with the audit committee. They've really assisted us a lot with getting audit ready and also with foregrounding some of the risks that we need to address. Yeah, I think it's been very useful. And I think also just to say that in terms of audit coverage, I think we're on the same page with the audit committee in terms of audit coverage this year round. Sometimes they want more coverage, but we are mindful not only that internal audit's got their own capacity constraints, but also there's only so much audit we can take in a year. And so, yeah, the coverage is something we have to just watch carefully, because audit fatigue is a real risk in its own right. And if we had to have 100% coverage, I think we would be spending all our time with the auditors and not getting around to actually doing work. So I think there's always a balance between audit coverage and operational demands that the management have to attend to. I don't know, CFO, if there's anything from your side. No? Okay. Thank you, Chairperson.
Honorable Maseko.
Chair, thank you very much. I think Chair for the AC, thank you very much for the brief, the presentation, and also sweet and short. But I think the engagement also talks to when you see the 15%, as you rightfully corrected. Also, we talk to you doing the oversight, these English words of managed imaging, risk, and I think we were leaning more of you also being a partner within the department in the functions and the services of the department itself. It wasn't more of managing per se, but is of attending to those risks, as you rightfully say. You are doing an oversight, and we tend to believe that also the advice, because rightfully when we engage with you, say you give the advice, and this is one of the departments that they listen to your advices. So we were more leaning to hear on this 15%. What is your innovative way of dealing with those risks that you have identified yourself? Not saying that the management part of it is your responsibility, but those engagement, that innovation that you can think about to share with us to reduce that 15%, it's what we thought we will engage, so that when we go to the annual reports, we can see that the risk have been reduced to maybe to a 10% for this financial year. But I think it's my contribution to this, Chair, and thank you very much.
If there is no further questions, Chairperson, do you want to any comments? Maybe you want to make responses. That comment.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as I mentioned, the gap is 50% for last year. Maybe just a bit of context. The gap was much more, but due to capacity constraints within the internal audit department, as well as one of the audits that was planned didn't materialize, it actually was 50%. As the HOD has said, is that we, from an audit committee, we always push for a higher audit coverage, but it is audit fatigue, and cost is definitely one of the items that we need to look at. But what we have done, and as I refer to that in the combined assurance model, is that together with internal audit, there's a combined assurance framework now, and that framework actually measures the levels of where the controls are in the department. This department, we're very fortunate, has very good controls in place. It had, and I think I've mentioned it, it had one of the best audit outcomes I've seen in a long time in any department, with very, very little findings on the first line of defense, which is the first line of controls. The second line of controls, as I said, is internal audit and the Auditor General. They didn't find much from both of those audits. And then lastly, the oversight function by ourselves and yourselves. There are other service providers that we look at the moment, for instance, internal control unit, to assist them with some of the assurance matters. But I can assure you that just from a departmental perspective, we are very involved in the whole risk management process together with ERM for the department. I hope that answers your question, or member.
Thank you, Chair. I think is responded. It's another engagement, because what the chairperson is saying versus the Kings for in taking also the level forward, it's not all about oversight. Also, their contribution also has to come in. And I'm saying this because we had an engagement. It's not this financial year, it was the last financial year, that what the chairperson was saying versus what the minister was saying, it was like there was no any samenwerking, if I can use the right word of Afrikaans. And it's what sort of highlighted to us that, okay, so we even engaged I can't remember her name, to come and brief us about the Kings for, to say the audit committees, their involvement, it goes to what an extent. And that is why we use the word management in talking to the issue of your engagement. It goes to what an extent, and your contributing factor to managing the risk, and to look at the functions, the controls within the department. So, but it's another conversation for another day, and also looking at the cost implication, because that's what we are trying to look at, from your internal to the audit committee to the AG, that where do we get value, the money, and what do we keep, what do we suggest that have to be reduced. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Museko. You're correct. The issue, especially about the issue of the King 4 report, can be a discussion for another day. And there are actually a lot of lessons we can learn from that, if we can just make some time to delve in details into because it talks a lot about the role of governance structures in terms of auditings and the like. But as you say, it will keep us almost the whole day if we can start talking about that. It might be good that maybe at some point we just put aside some time just about it. I was happy when I saw in one of our emails of the WCPP that there was going to be a training or a workshop on King for report, but for some reason it just disappeared. I don't know what happened. It was gonna be a very good learning curve for members of the provincial legislature in particular, actually. But of course, as I said, it will be a discussion and a conversation for another time. Now, if there are no further questions or comments from the side of the members, I don't know, maybe HOD or CFO, are there anything maybe you'd like to raise from our side? Or before that, before I allow the minister, if she's still online.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'll just check. I don't have anything further to add from my side. I'll just check whether any of the departmental officials would like to comment at this stage, or the CFO.
Chief, I maybe from my side, just to say thank you. I think this is useful also for us as a department, that these type of oversight engagements helps us also in terms of that. And yeah, I listening here, and I'm already seeing that our potential for when we have all these levels of assurance providing, hopefully the AG will come down with its fees and start relying on some of the others. So thank you, Chief.
CFO talking. Always willing to save costs. Minister?
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to the honourable members, the Audit Committee and our team. Despite not being in the room, I've listened intently, and I think it's one thing that the team prides itself on, and that is the whole risk management component of it. The need to do King 4, I think, is important. I have done King, and I understand the implications, but we have a team that is on the ball. Our engagements with the Audit Committee have always been robust, and the comments, I think, attest and speak to the fact that we have a team that keeps a close eye on everything. But as in life, there are those days or times when something will slip through, and the idea is to remedy it as quickly as possible. I was very privileged in my previous term as the Speaker of Parliament to go on a visit to Australia. And guess what happens there? The AG spends 2 weeks at the legislature or at any entity, and that is the extent of their stay. So I think we definitely need to look at the amount of time the Auditor General spends at an entity and the costs associated with it. And are we, in fact, is it worth the time spent pursuing if you have a department that has 8, 10 or 12, some departments have 12 clean audits? Is there a need for that intensive interrogation? I'm not saying I don't welcome oversight, but I do think that the time is right now to revisit the arrangement, especially in light of the cost of this entire exercise and the man hours that it takes by all the people in the room to provide the necessary information. It is necessary, and so I concur with the members completely that it is a conversation for another day. But I do wish to thank you, Chair, and the members and the Audit Committee members present today, as well as the support staff, for the opportunity for the department to present themselves once again to SCOPA. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Thank you very much also to the department for always being available, and also for the presentation that you've made, and also the fruitful engagements that we've actually have among us. And it's always a good thing to actually interact with you as a department, and we always come out having learned a thing or two. Thank you very much for your time. You may be excused, and there is a refreshment outside as you go along. There is coffee and tea and some snacks, while we as the committee will be continuing with the rest of our work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, everybody.
Line, are you there?
Yes, we're
Honorable
here, Chair.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm here, Chair. Thank you.
Apologies. We took a quick break, but we are back now. We also hope that you've enjoyed your break while we were on break as well.
Yeah.
Now we are just gonna then come back and then look into the agenda. The next item on the agenda is the report, the adoption of the consideration and adoption of the report. It's the minutes.
Yes.
So I'm just gonna ask the minutes to be flighted. Okay. There is the first part. Can you go down a little bit? Is that with it? The first page is attendance. And then the next page, that was the briefing by the Provincial Treasury. And that is self-explanatory. And that's matters arising, issues of SAPEC, and then also the resolutions. They are the resolution that we have taken. What is this? The issue of okay. If there are no problems, can there any proposal for the adoption of the minutes? Honorable Maseko. Honorable Maseko, Honorable America.
A second, Chair.
Thank you very much. The minutes have been adopted. And in that regard, also, Honorable Member, for your information, a letter is being forwarded to the chairperson, to the General Secretary of SAPEC regarding our resolution that we've actually taken. And we will be informing them of the decision of the committee around the issue of the subscriptions. Then we are finished with that. Oh, no, I can't leave. Then that takes us to the next item on the agenda. Yeah, no, the next item will be SAPEC issues on the agenda. Yes. On the issue of SAPEC, obviously, is the letter that I've forwarded to the chairperson, and also regarding the annual general meeting, we are still waiting confirmation, but I can report it's only on the matter of SATCOPEC that there will be a conference of SATCOPEC in, I think that communication will be sent. It's going to be in October, November. It's confirmed the date is the last week of October, first week of November. And then it's going to be in KZN. Communication will be sent accordingly. So far as the SAPEX one AGM is concerned, I think it's not gonna be with us until the finalization of the financial statement. And it's the matter, the issue of the financial statement is the issue that the General Secretary is seized with, and they were actually exploring other ways of even getting the financial statement, because it has just become so urgent that they are even looking into their suggestion of even getting a new firm of auditing to audit the financial statement and get done and finish with it, because it's the financial statement as of 2019. So they are exploring various avenues of finalizing the matter. As I said, even looking into also appointing a completely new firm to start dealing with the audit and get done and finish with, so that we can go to the annual general meeting with audited financial statements. But of course, there is correspondence on this. Some of the correspondence I will be submitting to the procedural officers for your information as well, honorable members. If there are comments you want to make or suggestions, they will be allowed. Honorable Maseko.
Chair, I wished to hear. Remember, I requested that maybe communication to the AG to find out if maybe can advise us what are the other avenues. But truth be told, I was asking this specifically because we've been having the AGMs throughout the years. Every financial, we've got the AGM, and we'll have address from the Auditor General. And trying to find out that, oh, how do I put this in a very nice way? Like, as the Auditor General, you've got a partnership with this organization, and then obviously you will know if the audit are done or not done. But from Auditor General being the custodian of making sure this country, why the silence through on something like this? So I was in a way trying to find out what will be their responses. And when we engage with them, to ask, were you not aware, or were you aware that this is what's happening? And if you were aware, why the partnership still with this organization while it's not conforming to the principles of the financial management? So it's a worrying factor. It looks like it's a small thing, but to me, it's such a big thing of really, are we ticking boxes, or are we really doing what is intended to be with this? And it's a good case study to look to what an extent are we going to go with this, and also what will be the outcome if from 2019 now, if we don't pay the money now, a new audit company has to be appointed to. So the one that was appointed, that was definitely, there's going to be the cost attached to that. How are they going to deal with that if they don't have those audit reports, but they've been paying? It's quite a conundrum that it's a concern that I want to again throw it in, Chair, that engagement directly.
Can I suggest that because I know, especially the General Secretary, the current one, he is always at pain in explaining the process, how frustrating it even to him as well, having to speak to the auditors, because we've got two types of auditors. The one that are also the secretary is an auditing firm that are, sorry, not secretary, but bookkeeping. It's a one firm of auditors. Then also the auditors themselves, it's a different firm. So the problem has always been between these two firms, those that are doing the bookkeeping and those that are supposed to be doing the auditing. I think one firm is Grant Thornton, and then the other one is not KPMG. It's another one. Okay. Now, but of course, Grant Thornton is also one of them that are involved. At some point now, that's what they were even saying. Look, that's why they were saying, let's get a completely new company that can start doing this thing. What I would suggest is that maybe at our next meeting is next week. I'll have a telephone conversation with the gents and say, can he also be present at our next meeting? Yeah. If maybe we would like to exchange questions with him and ask questions, point of clarity, I don't think he'll have a problem with that. He can either join us in person if you want, or online. You can come and sit at our meeting. Then when we're having a session on SAPEC, then we can start engaging him on that. Then we'll get everything from the horse's mouth, so to say. Okay, I think that's fine. He can bring. So, yeah. Then, honorable members, I don't know whether, based on the presentation that was done previously by the department, are there any specific resolution that you'd like to take on the matters that the department has raised? I know one of the issues we always raise, honorable members, but it's not really for resolution, just to refresh your memories. You know, this issue of performance audit all the time comes, and then truth be told, it was raised by one of the members of the audit. Some members of the audit committee always raise these issues. Of course, we also got interested in it. But I know one of our meetings, there's a meeting where we'll be meeting with the Auditor General, the Provincial Treasury, and among one of the issues we said we want, if they can just tell us about this animal of performance audit. Maybe when they meet us, they will be able to tell us whether we can go with this thing or not. That's one thing I just thought that maybe I just wanted to raise on the issue of performance. And I'm sure they will also update us as to how far this componentization process is, when is it going to be also adopted. I just felt that let me just raise that on, because sometimes I think it doesn't help raising it with other departments, because they will always tell us, look, we expecting guidance from the AG or provincial treasurer. Just thought, let me just raise that. But other than that, are there any other resolution, honorable members, would like to propose on the briefing of the Department of Social Development?
Chair, I think that is not for the department. It will be just the issue of engaging on the certificate, the cost of certificate, the commission, to engage with the commission to
that will be
for this outcry of the departments that, I mean, if I have to give the certificate, is costly, and the directive that you have to work through this consultant, it's quite worrisome also for it to happen that way. And what was the other one? I think I talked about something. Dustin, if you can remind me.
Yes, Chair. It was also a discussion between with Provincial Treasury and I know that the Department of the Premier, the Internal Audit Committee, they very much engages with all of the audit committees. So basically just a discussion on the King 4 and the audit committee functions in the departments.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much, Honorable Masego. Any other resolution? Honorable members online?
Chairperson, I may not have seen my hand. Thank you.
Apologies.
No, all good. Thank you. I think I support your view of getting the AG to the committee to brief the committee on the whole sort of movement towards performance audits. But I don't think also that needs to be done. But I don't think that we should, although it is important, I just want to choose my words carefully, that we need to find a way as a committee as to how we evaluate the audit outcomes with the performance of the departments itself. Now, I don't know how that will be done or how it needs to be done. Perhaps it's something that we can workshop, but I don't think that we should be too hung up with performance audits in the Western Cape in particular. As Honourable Maseko has mentioned during the course of the meeting, that half of the country can't even get clean audits or unqualified audits. So we must not be sidetracked with this whole notion of performance audits. What we should, and having said that, in making the comparative comparison, one of the audit committee members was saying, and I remember it very well, about the Department of Police Oversight getting 10 clean audits, but are we safe? And you repeated again in the meeting. Again, that is a misplaced sort of statement in the sense that keeping the citizens of South Africa and the Western Cape safe is not the Department of Community Safety. It's a primary responsibility of the South African Police Services. And they haven't gotten a clean audit for as long as memory can serve me. So the point that I'm trying to say, Chair, is that we need to find out a way in which we could assess the performance of the party, of the departments in terms of its annual performance plans and audit outcomes, whether it conforms with our expectations of service delivery. Furthermore, I think it was also mentioned that I think is important is that the cost of audit is prohibitive in an environment where the Auditor General has a monopoly. That is something that we need to address because the scope of the audit, necessitate the increase in costs. And perhaps when we do meet with the auditor in terms of your suggestion, in terms of our discussion towards moving towards performance audits, it is something that we need to address as well. To what degree, given the history of a department in terms of compliance and predetermined objectives, whether the scope ought to be so extensive that necessitates increase in audit costs. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable America. Honorable Nkondlo.
No, thanks, Chair. Chair, it's always difficult to get into conversations where sometimes, we feel we must make more political footballing on real matters that are facing society, because we believe that our political heads may be compromised one way or the other. And I just feel, I think, for Member America to call, performance audit, as would be sidetracking, or the term that he used, for me, I think it's out of order. Because I think this conversation is actually, as it has came back to SCOPA, is of a reason of this particular committee. We are the committee that actually asked for this particular matter, because there's ample evidence on the ground in terms of our own financial oversight and oversight in general, of the extent to which indeed the contribution of the state with its resources, which is taxpayers' money, must always be evaluated against the value for money, but also impact and outcome results. And the compliance audits have only looked at inputs, outputs, that yes, things are getting done. Yes, if we said we're going to spend 20 rand, we've spent the 20 rands. But it's not asking whether that 20 rand was spent on the right things. And it's a conversation that almost every other audit exercise that we've entered into, that the Auditor General would always respond like that when we ask this and that to them, that theirs, is to look and they sample for that matter. They sample for that particular year, especially on program indicators. They always sample against many things that would be in that particular department. So we are called here with a responsibility to the citizens of the country, and therefore we've got a responsibility, and the performance audit, which have been deliberated upon by the Auditor General's office, to say this is the way we can get to the next level, and where there is already improvements in provinces, in departments, in state-owned entities where such has been done, we need to graduate so that we are able to ensure that we realize the ultimate. The ultimate is to ensure that service delivery is not just a tick box exercise. It is actually a change of conditions of people. So indeed, the question may not necessarily be whether indeed that particular department on its own would resolve the issue of crime. But we must be able to say, year in and year out, all of these billions of rands that gets to be spent in crime is whether we're spending money on the right things. So it can't be, it would be irresponsible to say, that is sidetracking. And what I would want to support is actually what Member America is raising, of asking, of actually workshopping ourselves so that indeed we start to, graduate in terms of conversations, to move conversation from subjective issues, but to objective realities that we are confronted with our responsibility, individuals and other the parties that we represent. So I would want to support, Chair, that we need a workshop with the AG, and the AG may even identify any other additional either institutions, even in the academia, some experts who would actually help us to understand the thinking, the theory of change behind the notion of performance auditing, because performance auditing is going nowhere. It's going to be here, and we just need to ensure that we ready ourselves and we ensure that the good work that has been done by most of our departments and entities, is not lost, in that phase, but also to ensure, which I take what the HOD actually of social development was saying, how will that particular performance audit framework consider the peculiarities of service delivery interfacing departments like social development, their scope and size, because they're really so huge, versus, other departments which are more coordinating, like the Premier, Provincial Treasury, and others. So those things are important for us to empower ourselves. And I don't think it is a sideshow for us to do that and to engage on that matter in this particular committee, so that we really are ahead and ready ourselves, because the good work that has been done in our province and in our departments must really get this department to move a higher up. It's not enough to want to use this, to always be commenting and comparing with those that are still a difficulty and failing. Because what's the point? You don't become intelligent amongst people that are lower than you. You become intelligent amongst other people with the same intelligence. So let's raise the bar. We celebrate excellence, and that excellence must really be able to produce the necessary outcomes that people on the ground, even here in our own province, they still are asking the questions of the clean audits versus their lived realities. So our intention is to match up that, and we already have got a baseline because we've got clean audits, and those clean audits must therefore enable us to ensure that that clean audit in paper is exactly the lived experience of the citizens, which we commit to when we take the oath. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nkondlo. It's just been interesting how the honorable members online are very much involved in the debate. They start off differing from completely different ends, but eventually they agree on at some point that maybe we need to have some kind of a workshop among ourselves as to whether what is really this animal that we are talking about, that we say is performance audit. Can it be done or cannot be done? Can it not be done? So I think eventually it might assist us if we are beginning to approach it like that. I think in a way we are talking the same language, but in different ways. So I think maybe one of the things you need to just explore, Mr. Davids, is to whether maybe when we meet with the AG, because it's in our program, is one thing we should raise sharply with them. And then also, how can it be taken forward? Can they also familiarize members on this thing if we're saying performance audit? Because we should always understand there's a difference between performance information and performance audit. Those are two different things. The performance information is always there, but it might not speak to live the realities that most of the members have been actually talking about. So I think we've taken note of that. I see Honorable Maseko, you want to have another resolution?
Yeah, Chair, I want us to also request. I'm not going to dwell in that. It's clear. It's the online, the in-house. Chair, we are saying, can we get it? And I think that's where Mr. Davis have to advise us. Can we get the cost attached to the auditing of the last financial year? If we can be allowed to see and then be per department, per municipality in that form. And two, also when we engage, one of the points on agenda has to be, because they sample checked performance auditing somewhere. They had a pilot, I can't remember where. And if that's the case, the cost implication to the performance auditing, so that we can collect all the info to compare. Now, another thing, Chair, that I want to highlight is now also from our side, looking at the annual report of service delivery in the standing committees, because that's where they check the service delivery, much as they don't attach the cost side of it, because we attend to the cost, but the service delivery is in those standing committees. So also to look at the blurry lines of it. That is why interpretation of performance audit versus service delivery audit, we have to get the interpretation correctly, that what do we mean exactly by the performance plan. So if we can get that cost implications of this vision that we have, it will help us to the way forward to say, because also at the end is the Auditor General that have to say, now I'm doing this, because presently the prescribed objectives that he has to bring in will have to talk to the performance or the service delivery per se. So I'll appreciate if we can get that sort of their business plan when they go auditing. How do they go about to get there? If they also bring people from Pretoria to come to do the auditing, it's a special department. Thank you, Chair.
I just wanted to add to what my member Maseko was raising in terms of the amounts, and maybe also add in terms of how many municipalities or how many departments owe the AG in terms of their audit fees.
Thank you, Chair. Will it be just in the Western Cape?
Yeah, Western Cape.
Only Western.
Just Western Cape. Yeah, because there is no free lunch in this country.
Which country do you find this free lunch, Member Seleko?
At the Silego residence.
Well, it's a country on its own. We will visit. Keto. Don't be stressed when we enter there and invade.
Now, honorable members, as we round off, I want us just to bring to your attention that the next meeting of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts will be on the 19th. And it's gonna be a physical meeting. That means an in-person meeting, which is something that I think at some point now we need to be on the same level on. Now, obviously, today's meeting was also is in person. It was advertised as such. But you see, sometimes you get requests from members saying that, and especially even departments as well. Sometimes on department, we are very strict. We'll say, look, if the meeting is in person, they must come in person. And as you have seen, they've all come. But then you get also a request. I must say, as on today's meeting, the request I got was from Honorable America and Honorable Nkondlo. You see, it becomes difficult sometimes to even say no to honorable members. But then you might find a situation whereby if we say yes, then I'll end up sitting alone here because all members have requested to can please attend online. Then it defeats the purpose of it being a physical meeting. So I would like us now to get on the same level, same understanding that when we say a meeting is going to be physical, we all adhere to that and all of us be here and be present so that we don't have this thing that, because on the same vein, the members who are here will have also said that we will have requested you to be online, So I just want us to be on the same wavelength that when we say it's gonna be an in-person meeting, if we may all please attend in person, unless it has been advertised otherwise. Honorable Maseko, I see your hand is up.
Chairperson, another thing is if there's changes like there is an option, it must be communicated so that also we get the luxury of making a choice. We'll appreciate that. Another one, it will be, what was it that I was going to ask? Another one, it will be, we had an agreement of in person. If it's in person, can we not have the link as a brief?
Don't distribute the link.
Don't distribute the link. We must then have the Teams link because it's in person. Immediately when I receive the link, that means it's optional. From now on, I'm going to take it that way. It's a conversation, I think, from procedural officer that it has to be that way. If it's in person, if you are not going to be able to come and send the alternate that can be to come and be in the meeting, but it cannot be the communication that is so and so. Thank you.
Let's go online, Honorable America.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, as we all chairpersons and the practice has been as far as possible, we as chairpersons do not dictate to other chairpersons as to how they should conduct the affairs of the committee that they chair. Now, the whole notion of a link being shared, no link was shared. I requested from you permission to attend the meeting online. Had you refused permission, I would have considered other options. So, and only when you have agreed to it, then a request was forwarded to the procedural officer to provide the access link. So it is not a question of a link was shared to everybody willy-nilly. It was purely on the basis of the request. But the whole notion of inflexibility, we as the DA members in particular, often have to stand in for many other DA members who are not present. And it becomes exceedingly difficult to find a replacement for a particular meeting. And like yesterday, I had to stand in for a member who has been granted leave. On Friday, I have to stand in for a member who has granted leave. I had to attend an agricultural meeting the whole of yesterday afternoon also. And the default of that committee is virtual. So, I mean, it is not a question of people just taking advantage of the fact that they're being online or not. And I, as a person, can attest to that. Never before have I ever abused a process where I could be online instead of being in person. I take offense for the inference being made that people willy-nilly just decide to be online. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Honorable America. Honorable Nkondlo.
Yeah, no, Chair, I
Pastor
think thanks, Chair. I think as a committee, and including yourselves as chairpersons to these committees, you see, we must always mediate between the rules and the reasonableness and practicality of the rules. So that, Chair, indeed, no inference is made as if people are abusing an environment that is there. Because from where I'm sitting, Chair, you see practicality of me being able to be in the meeting. That is why I indicated that I won't be able to be in the meeting since it was communicated it is physical. But if there is a link, which was then provided to me, so what I'm trying to say is that if for any reason, let's get to why are we, I mean, one of the things about COVID, colleagues, we can't run away and want to be traditionalists now in our approach, because there's a reality that post-COVID, we've then been introduced to technology as a way to be effective in our work. And I'm saying in this way, I'm not saying physical meetings are not. I'm not making any comparison. I'm just saying striking a balance is always important, but also bringing into the picture or into the formula, the different variations of the realities of those that are supposed to be subjects of that particular rule or law. So I'm just saying, in light with both yourself, Chair, and Member Maseko, one, if we could then understand why would a meeting be made physical only? Is it because there is sensitive information that we believe it could not be, be on the platform for whatever reason? Is it just a standard to say people must come to the office? Because it is through those reasons that reasonableness becomes party to the decision of having a meeting only, because it is clear now that if there is still a leeway for people to still be in the meeting, because indeed, myself and Member America, with the rule that was there, we could then not be part of the meeting, we could have been absent. So we're just pleading that at least, try to meet the both ends of the spectrum so that the decision is not made on one side, because we may be viewed as if we're trying to be rebelling against decisions, which is not true, because evidence to date of the nature of members that we are and our consistency in attending meetings demonstrate that we are not trying to be rebellious against the rules. So I'm just asking, Chair, for practicality reasons, that if indeed there are meetings for particular reasons that are made to be only physical, I fully concur, and those must be communicated so that all of us are aware of those. And that must be that line, you would have to stick to that. And at this point, we were allowed to the meeting, and we did express, that we had challenges. I had a challenge to come to the office today, and that is why I said, if there is an option or possible for me to still be in the meeting, let me be allowed. And I was allowed, but I was very much prepared to be absent given my situation that makes me unable to be in the office today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nkondlo. Honorable Kasim.
Thank you, Chair. If I can just add, I think that we shouldn't limit the committee meeting to just being physical. I mean, we serve on different committees. Some of us are deployed in other regions or on oversight, also for other committees, and might not make it to this meeting. Like in my case, I'm not in Cape Town. It's not a fact where I'm sitting in my bed and in the comfort of my home linking up because I didn't want to come to the chambers. I'm in Hermanus, so I sent an apology. Just to give an example, I sent an apology and I said I won't be able to make it. But if there is a link, and if you do allow me to enter, I'm willing to go online to do that. And in this case, I'm online because of that. But like the previous member said, if meetings will consist of matters which deals with confidential issues, then in that case, we can maybe make it physical meetings where it's compulsory to be in the meeting physically. So yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, honorable members. I just felt that I needed to raise this issue with you. Thank you very much for your comments and your information and your views on this matter. However, we would still like to actually expect that if maybe if it's a meeting has been communicated as physical, we will expect members to actually also try as much as they can to be present at that physical meeting, unless there are matters that are beyond their control. That will be understandable. And in that instance, maybe a replacement or an alternative can be requested to attend on the member's behalf. Because then the meeting is advertised or pronounced as physical, it is like that, it is physical. But of course, if there are matters beyond your control that you can make, please make other arrangements as well, or alternative arrangement. Thank you very much, honorable members. I just felt that I needed to raise that so that we can all be on the same same wavelength of understanding. Thank you very much for your participation as well as your attendance. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks.